What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Over Analysis channel. Today we're talking about the Miami Dolphins and their fantasy relevant players and whether or not we are targeting or fading them in our drafts this summer. At quarterback, the Dolphins added Malik Willis in free agency, and Willis began this offseason as a nice late round quarterback target. We know what he is as a dual threat. He brings a lot of rushing upsides to the table, but then the Dolphins went and traded away his top receiver, Jalen Waddle, and really didn't do a lot to address the position. They've got a lot of unknowns there right now, which we'll get into some of those guys later, but there's not even a decent number two receiver for Willis to work with right now, let alone a true number one. So it's really going to cap his upside. It's putting him in a bad position to succeed. And while there's still some upside there to him, he's going to have his spiked weeks. The rushing upside is still there. I think you have to temper expectations with him. He's still fine, like as a late round quarterback. There's going to be weeks where he's going to be okay to stream, but you really have to temper expectations around Malik Willis. I would not feel comfortable with him being my top quarterback going into a season. At best, he would be a late round QB2. With Devon Achane, he's everything you look for in a fantasy football running back. He's young, he's explosive, he's got major receiving upside, but the problem with Achane is I think he's really going to be hurt by the supporting cast this year. The lack of options at the receiver position is going to make it so defenses just key in on taking him away. And then Malik Willis is still far from a sure thing at the quarterback position. And unlike Tua last year, Willis is much more likely to take off and run than he is to check down to Achane. So this could be a year where Achane's receiving upside goes down considerably. And also factor in, again, with the Dolphins, same thing as the Jets. Anytime you're dealing with a bad team, their major players, especially at the running back position, are prime candidates to be shut down late in the season. And given that Achane is going to cost you a late first round pick, a high second round pick maybe, to get on your fantasy rosters, I think there's way too much risk and not enough upside there for me to be drafting him. As for the rest of the running backs, you have Jalen Wright and Ollie Gordon, who both looked good at times last year in limited roles, but these aren't anything more than handcuffs, and they're not the level of handcuff that you would want to fill out on the back end of your roster. These are guys to just keep an eye on as the season progresses, and if we start to get hints that the Dolphins will indeed shut down Achane at some point, then you do a speculative ad for Wright or Gordon as the season goes on, but these aren't guys that you need to roster in September. The Dolphins wide receiver room has to be the worst in the NFL. You have guys like Malik Washington, Jalen Tolbert at the top of the depth chart. Then they took 3 rookies in the draft this year. Chris Bell coming off of major injury, Kevin Coleman, Chris Douglas. And the good news is all of these guys you can pretty much get for free. They're all late round draft picks in redraft, but the question you have to ask yourself is, do you really want to be drafting any of these guys, even if they are free? And I guess what you have to do is you have to keep an eye on things in training camp, see if any one of these guys starts to separate from the pack. But even if they do, I think the upside for all these guys is so low, they're not going to be anything more than a low-end wide receiver 3 play or a flex play on any given week. This is just a situation to avoid. We'll close out on a bit of a positive note. At the tight end position, Greg Dulcich is the one member of the Miami passing game that's been getting any kind of hype. He's gotten good reviews out of minicamp and throughout the summer. There's a chance that he's the top target in this passing game with how bad the wide receiver position is. And Dulcich is completely free. He's not going to get drafted in a lot of leagues. You can certainly get him with your final round pick. Now, I certainly wouldn't want to go into the season with Dulcich as my tight end 1, but in a late tight end build where you double dip at the position on 2 of the later options, I'm certainly okay with Dulcich as my tight end 2. And that's going to do it for this one, guys. So again, the Dolphins, you're talking about a bad team, a team that's going to struggle to generate a lot of offense, and certainly going to struggle to score more than 20 points a game. And it's tough to target guys on teams like this. And again, even a high-end guy like Devon Achane, where you're going to have to pay a premium for a guy that, while his skill set is fantastic, the situation just sucks. So it's not a situation that I want to have a lot of exposure to this year in fantasy. But again, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will talk to you next week when we start going through the AFC North, beginning with the Cincinnati Bengals.